My name is James. I'm in my mid-30s, a man who has always believed in honesty and loyalty. I inherited an old furniture workshop from my father. Its scent, its touch, always enveloped me, a safe haven. It was the culmination of years of effort, dreams, and hard work. When I met Emily, the woman I believed to be the love of my life, I felt as if she had merged with the warmth of that workshop. She was both a muse and my closest friend. The sparkle in her eyes, the smile on her lips, illuminated my world like the sun. We married. The ring I placed on her finger wasn't just a piece of metal, it was a symbol of my endless love, trust, and commitment to her. The first years of our marriage were like a fairy tale. Everything was as it should be, even better. Emily was an artistic soul, creative and vibrant. She painted, she made ceramics. Her artistic flair brought joy to the dignified atmosphere of my workshop. I'd set aside a corner for her as a small studio. Sometimes, while I carved wood, she would dance with clay. We inspired each other, shared each other's dreams. Our biggest dream was to bring to life the project I'd been working on for years, a boutique workshop producing handmade, custom designed furniture. This was not just my dream, but ours. Every evening at dinner before bed, even during coffee breaks, we would discuss the details of this dream. Emily offered to handle the marketing, write the product stories, and manage social media. I loved the idea. Together, we could overcome anything. Over time, business grew. The workshop was no longer just a furniture production site, it had also become a small gallery showcasing Emily's artwork. Our customers weren't just buying furniture, they were also showing interest in Emily's paintings and ceramics. This motivated us even more. We worked harder, produced more. It was amidst this intensity that Mark entered our lives. He was an old university friend of Emily's. He said he was an interior designer, working on large scale projects. When Emily first mentioned Mark, I wasn't initially bothered. It was normal for her to see an old friend. We even invited him to dinner one evening, and Mark expressed his admiration for the workshop and for Emily's artistic talent. At first, this flattered me. I was pleased that Emily was appreciated. However, Mark's visits gradually became more frequent. His excuse was always to discuss business, to talk about new projects. They could talk for hours about Emily's artwork. I tried to join these conversations, but often found myself feeling excluded. That special bond between them, that common language, started to bother me. A few times I asked Emily, "Don't you think Mark is coming around a bit too much?" She would respond defensively, "James, he's just my friend. We're talking business. What's wrong with that?" The slight rise in her voice, the defensive look in her eyes, gnawed at me. But I was a traditional man who believed a husband should trust his wife. Doubting her wasn't something I thought I should do, or so I believed. During that period, I was working on a new project at the workshop. We were producing custom designed furniture for a large restaurant. This was the project of my life, and I had dedicated all my energy to it. I was at the workshop from early morning until late at night. Emily was constantly meeting with Mark. "We're exchanging ideas for new projects," she'd say. "We're thinking about artistic collaborations." And I naively believed her. Perhaps I wanted to believe her, even though something deep inside bothered me. I tried to suppress that discomfort. One evening, when I came home from the workshop, I couldn't find Emily. I called her phone, but she didn't answer. I was worried. She arrived half an hour later. "Where were you, Emily?" I was worried. I asked. "I had a business dinner with Mark I couldn't let you know," she said. There was a slight tremor in her voice, and a shadow in her eyes I hadn't seen before. I couldn't sleep that night. A worm of doubt had crept into my mind. In the morning, beside Emily's bed, I found a note hastily left, with Mark written on it, and a piece of paper. The note read, "Darling, I'll miss you so much. This is our first step towards our dreams." On the paper was one of Emily's famous drawings, one she had drawn specifically for me. On the side of the drawing was a tiny note, this time not with you, but with him. This was a shock to me. The drawing was a draft for the logo of our Dream Boutique workshop, but the words in the note, at that moment my world crumbled. I took out my phone and dialed the number on the note. It was me calling, but the person I was calling was Emily. She hadn't even saved my number. I wanted to deny it. Maybe there was a misunderstanding, I thought, but something inside me had shattered. I confronted Emily. "What does this mean, Emily?" I asked, my voice trembling. She denied it at first. Then her eyes welled up. "James, I'm tired of this life. Being with you stifles me. Mark offers me a new world, a brighter, more exciting world," she said. The coldness in her voice, that cruel honesty, froze me. Something broke inside me. In that moment, everything lost its meaning. Every dream, every plan, every promise, every word she had shared with me was a lie. Emily left home. She left behind only an emptiness and a broken heart. The workshop, once the meaning of my life, now felt like a prison. Every corner held her memories, her presence, her scent, her sounds, her laughter. Everything reminded me of Emily, and it was an unbearable pain. For months I locked myself in the workshop. Working was a kind of escape for me. I constantly worked with wood to forget my pain, to silence my thoughts. But no matter how much I worked, the emptiness inside me wouldn't close. Mark and Emily had started a new company. I followed them on social media. They had stolen my dreams, my ideas. They were now realizing the boutique workshop dream we had built together. They had even used my designs, my efforts, and the logo I had registered under my name. This was a blow not only to my heart, but also to my soul. Anger, pain, betrayal. These emotions simmered within me like a volcano. As I saw their happy photos, my anger grew even stronger. The fire of revenge began to consume me. But this wouldn't be a simple revenge. It would be a slow, destructive vengeance, striking them at their most sensitive points. When Emily and I got married, I designed a special ring for her. This was no ordinary ring. From a special piece of wood, carved from a tree that had grown in the deepest parts of my workshop, passed down from my father, I had carved a code that held a special meaning for us. This code was a cipher known only to us. I had made a small cavity in the ring and placed that tiny piece of wood inside. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary ring. However, this ring also served as a key, providing access to all the computers, drawings, and financial data in the workshop. While I wasn't very tech savvy, my father was quite knowledgeable about such matters and had taught me this system. This ring was, in essence, the key to our digital fortress. Emily also knew this secret. She even knew the code inside the ring by heart. It was a symbol of that special bond, that trust between us. And this ring would be the first step in my revenge plan. I was certain Emily was still wearing the ring. I knew her so well that, knowing its sentimental value, I believed she would never take it off. Indeed, my entire plan would revolve around this ring. First, I needed to access all their company's financial data, customer lists, and even future projects. I worked for days at the old computer my father had left me. Thanks to that special code in the ring, I was able to access Emily's and Mark's computers. I spent nights at the computer like a hacker. I downloaded and copied all their data: how much they were earning, who they were working with, what projects they were discussing. I learned everything step by step. What I saw enraged me even more. They had registered my ideas, my designs, under their names. They were realizing everything I had dreamed of. But now, this was my dream too. I would simply take it back from them. My second step was to gain their trust. I had to infiltrate their world. I reconnected with Emily's old art circle. I opened the doors of my workshop to them, talked about new projects. People were surprised by this sudden change in me, but I presented myself as a man who was fully dedicated to his work, trying to leave the past behind. I even attended a few social events, going to places where Emily and Mark were. I watched them from a distance. I smiled, I greeted them. I acted as if nothing had happened. This was the hardest part. My insides burning, yet remaining outwardly calm. A few months later, Emily and Mark announced they would be opening a booth at a major exhibition. This was my opportunity. It was their biggest project, and they were planning a huge promotion. I also opened a booth for my own workshop. It was near theirs, but never conspicuous. I wanted to show that I had transformed my old, worn out workshop into a modern gallery. As I passed by Emily and Mark's booth, I greeted them, congratulated them. Emily looked at me with surprise, while Mark smiled with a condescending expression. "James, we thought this business wasn't for you," he said. I just smiled. "I'm learning," I replied. At the exhibition, Emily and Mark's booth was very crowded. They were proud of the designs I had created. I waited for an opportunity. One evening, near the exhibition closing, I caught a moment when Emily's booth was empty. I approached her. "Emily, I want to show you something," I said. She was surprised. "What is it, James?" she asked. "This ring," I said, pointing to the ring on her finger. "Do you know it has a secret?" Emily's face turned white. I mentioned the code inside the ring. "This code, wasn't it ours, Emily? You used this code. You stole our dreams." Emily's eyes welled up. "James, I'm sorry," she said. "I know I did you a great injustice. But Mark, he deceived me. He planned everything." This was the moment I had been waiting for. Emily had started blaming Mark to defend herself. A feeling of triumph filled me. My plan was actually much simpler. Inside that ring was a tiny USB drive. It contained all of Emily's correspondence with me, all our design ideas, and even the original files of that famous boutique workshop logo sketch I had drawn for her. The day before the exhibition, I had subtly mounted that USB drive onto Emily's ring. This was a matter of seconds, unnoticed by anyone. I had been following them, observing every moment. As Emily was in a panic, I said, "Emily, do you know? This ring isn't just a key." I said, "It's also a voice recorder." From the tiny voice recorder hidden in the ring, I had recorded all of Emily and Mark's conversations. How Mark manipulated Emily, how he planned to steal my ideas, how he convinced Emily. Everything was on record. At that moment, the shock and fear on Emily's face began to satisfy my desire for revenge. The next day was the last day of the exhibition. Emily and Mark were going to give a big presentation. The hall was packed. I was sitting in one of the front rows. Mark stepped onto the stage proudly, presenting my designs, my ideas, as if they were his own achievements. Emily stood beside him, her face pale. Just as Mark reached the climax of his speech, I stood up. I gave Emily a signal. Emily, as if robotic, took the microphone from Mark's hand. The hall fell silent. "My name is Emily," she said, her voice trembling, "and I am a thief who stole the life of the true owner of all these successes, my ex-husband James. These designs, these ideas, these dreams, they all belong to him." The hall began to whisper in shock. Mark looked at Emily furiously, lunging towards her, but Emily continued. "This ring," she said, showing the ring on her finger, "this ring is the biggest proof of this betrayal." Then, turning to a large screen, Emily connected the USB drive hidden in her ring to the projector. On the screen, all the correspondence between me and Emily, all the emails, all the design drafts began to appear. My original logo, my original drawings, everything was there, exposed in its raw truth. The hall instantly filled with murmurs. People whispered in shock and anger. Mark's face turned crimson. But the biggest blow was yet to come. Emily, with trembling hands, activated the voice recorder inside the ring. The audio recordings of Emily and Mark discussing their wicked plans, how they would steal my ideas, how they would sideline me, everything was out in the open. The hall instantly turned into a boiling cauldron. People were reacting to Mark and Emily. Some had stood up shouting. Mark tried to grab the microphone in a panic, but Emily held on tight. As Emily spoke her final words, her eyes met mine. "My mistake, James, was losing my trust in you. And this is my punishment," she said. Then she descended from the stage and disappeared into the crowd. Mark, in shame, hastily left the stage. The exhibition area was suddenly in chaos. People looked at each other in surprise, trying to understand what had been said. Some turned to me with sympathy, while others went after Mark. I, however, stood tall. That emptiness, that pain, that anger inside me, all of it had been replaced by a strange sense of satisfaction. I had taken my revenge, but had it brought me peace? I didn't know. Emily disappeared after that day. I never heard from her again. Mark's company, on the other hand, suffered a huge blow. It lost its reputation. Its projects were cancelled. All its orders were withdrawn. It went bankrupt in a short time. His name became synonymous with theft. For me, life went on. My workshop was no longer just a workplace, but also a place of salvation. I created new designs, became more creative. People had learned my story and started flocking to my workshop to support me. The pain I had experienced in the past had made me stronger, more resilient. The love I had felt for Emily had been destroyed by betrayal, but the revenge that remained, to some extent, satisfied me. Perhaps this was my new beginning, a beginning where I would rebuild, independent of anyone, realizing only my own dreams.